my name is Leah. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to be starting Maggie Stiefvater's writing class. For those of you who don't know, she has a writing class that's available on Etsy. It's a digital video slash workbook style setup. It is normally $38, but I bought it on Black Friday. I think at $25 was what the sale brought it out to be. Basically, it's 8 hours of video lecture. It comes with a workbook and exercises to work through some of the stuff that we talk about. And then she also hosts a Q&A, I think quarterly. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I do know she does some like live stream Q&A stuff as well. Or maybe it's not live stream. She answers questions. I actually haven't read anything by Maggie Stiefvater, weirdly enough. I've known about her as an author for a really long time because she's kind of like one of those staple names in YA. I've read some short snippets of stuff that she's written or like short stories, and I've read a lot of her writing advice online, and I've really liked the way that she kind of sets those things up, so I thought that her class would be a really fun one to take, and I thought I would bring you guys along as I take it as well to give you some of my thoughts about how it goes, how I like it, and some insight into the whole thing, so maybe you can decide if it's something that you want to do or not. I've taken a quick little peek at the classes because they're all private videos on Vimeo, and you have to have a password in order to watch them. Today I want to get through at least the first 7 classes, but depending on how all that goes, I might go further. So let's jump right into it all. Again, I am back for day number 2 of taking Maggie Stiefvater's class. Yesterday I did get through classes 1 through 7. Basically, so far, what we've been talking about is the idea formation phase of writing. I really like the way that she is kind of coming at this in all aspects in terms of taking the abstract idea in your head and making it concrete and in words, and that is the process of writing. She's essentially saying at the beginning that your book exists in its most perfect form in the abstract in your mind, and the act of writing is translating that abstract idea into a concrete thing that others can then read. And the goal then becomes not to make it perfect, because the minute you start putting words onto a page, the book becomes imperfect, which I find very relatable, especially for a first draft, man. That's kind of the whole thing behind just write the draft and you can revise it later to bring it closer to what you want. But I like just the mental image of the book existing perfectly up here and then imperfectly on the page, because it kind of takes some of the pressure, I think, off of the importance of those words. And it also kind of clarifies what the work you're doing is on the page, because the work then becomes not to create the perfect story here, it's to fix and mold and work on the stuff here so that it most closely reflects what's up here, which I kind of like. She's used a lot of examples, and most of them I do appreciate because they kind of illustrate the things that she's talking about. Some of them feel a little bit like side tangenty, but it's not to the point where I feel like I'm not learning anything or wasting my time by watching these. I am really enjoying them so far. Maggie Stiefvater also has a process where she tries to stay in her head about the book as long as possible before writing anything down. So adding to that idea, dialing in on what the mood and the tone is that she wants, figuring out the setting, all of that kind of stuff is all done up here, which I mean, I do to an extent. I think everyone does that to a certain level because your idea obviously originates in your head and you have to keep thinking about it until you finally land on the idea being big enough to actually turn it into a book. There's been a few exercises where she's given a prompt essentially and had you kind of play around with it and try to come up with a story based off of this prompt, which I do like the exercises, and I've been like sort of participating in them. It's not that I don't like it, I do like it, but I'm not getting a ton from it just because of the way my brain works, and I don't think that Maggie Stiefvater would say well, then you have to do it because blah, blah, blah. Because she does start off by saying, like, everyone's brain works differently. This is just the way that she approaches it. And my job as a writer is to figure out how my brain works and then do that to write. So I don't think that's an issue that I'm not fully participating in the exercises. But while I was thinking about one of them, I did have, I don't know, a little bit of an idea for a middle grade book that I want to write. Not really about the book itself, but it sort of helped me land on some like self-reflection things about who I was in middle school and the things that I was struggling with. And so I kind of like wrote that down quickly to circle back around to the whole keeping it up here for as long as possible. I like to do that, but I also just have to jot notes down to myself because, I don't know, being such a visual person, I need to see things on the page or in a picture or whatever in order to fully like comprehend what's going on. So I jotted down some notes. It's not really a story idea. It's more, I guess, to do with theme than anything, because as again, Maggie was talking about the way she goes through her story idea creating process, starting with like mood and tone, then getting some like idea nuggets and then combining those to make like a premise and adding some setting. Theme can sort of fall into the idea nugget section, but I feel like one thing I absolutely need before most other things is a theme. Even if that theme changes as I'm working on the story, I need a jumping off point because I like to know what the book is going to be saying at the end of the day, and that kind of helps me decide on how I'm going to say that thing. But that is how yesterday's class taking went. I am enjoying it so far. Today my plan was to get through class number 14. I'm gonna actually shoot for 16 just because I was able to get through yesterday's slightly faster than I was anticipating. So we're gonna shoot to get to class number 16. For context, let me see how many total there are. There's 28 classes total plus 4 like Q&A session videos as well. So 32 videos total to get through, which by getting to 16 today, I'll be halfway through. Okay, so I have officially made it to class number 23, or video number 23 of the class. We've jumped into the actual act of drafting so far. Maggie Stiefvater has given some interesting tips and tricks for like the way that she goes about drafting, and it all kind of ties back into that whole idea of translating, how writing a book is taking the abstract and turning it into the concrete words on the page. And I do also really appreciate the fact that she's giving a lot of examples as well. Like everything is kind of being laid out and like, here's how this applies practically to when I was writing the Scorpio races or Call Down the Hawk or whatever. I feel like if I had actually read her books before this, some of those examples might be more helpful. Like she's made some references that I don't really understand because I haven't read the books, but she's also been good to kind of explain what that means for people who haven't read the books. Like for example, there was one of the classes was kind of about characterization and how you can describe a character on the page beyond just like giving the reader a physical description, because a physical description like might help give them an image, but no matter how specific you are with your physical description, everyone's still always going to have a different image in their mind about what that person looks like. And so it's a lot better, I say better in air quotes, because you know, with writing or any art or creative thing, there's not really a better or worse. It kind of just depends on what tools you want to use to get the result that you're trying to get. But in this case, it's quote unquote better to give more of an emotional truth about what that person feels like, what the point of view character perceives about them emotionally, or what it feels like to be in the same room as that person. She was using some of her characters as examples, and before we like jumped into that, she kind of just like prefaced it with like this character has this history with these, and like this is why they have this estranged relationship, and so here's how I showed that in the text. It made a lot of sense, and I like just the way that she was kind of describing, especially the characterization stuff, because I think that that's something that I've tried to do in my head before, but not really had the words to describe, or I've never really had it explained to me in that way. And I think hearing it in that way will help me be more specific with my choices in my writing. I'm thinking back to Project Shadows and the way that I'm describing my characters, and I think that there have been some places where I've confused physical description for emotional description. And I think emotional description would get the characters across a lot better than the physical one. And as someone who doesn't really have like a super specific image of my characters in her head, like I can kind of see them, but the details are fuzzy enough that whenever I'm writing, I end up just kind of slapping on some random physical attributes to help describe them. But even then, those physical attributes still don't make their way into my head. And so there have been times where I've written a story and like halfway through the character's like hair color changes or like the shape of their face. I think it's encouraging to hear that I don't need a ton of physical details in order to get the attitude or the aura, if you will, the vibes of the character across. That's just one example of the way that Maggie Stiefvater has explained things that has helped me specifically. There have been a couple things in this drafting section that I haven't found quite as helpful because, you know, I have been doing this for a while and it is something that I have studied and like took classes on in college and stuff. So that's not a negative thing necessarily about the class. That's just for me personally. I did enjoy, there was a specific section where she was talking about how movies and television are different from books and what the different strengths are. And I was like so into that because I've thought about that a lot because of how my college degree is in film and now I'm writing books, and I've really gotten to see like just how different those two mediums are. Like movies are really good at getting information across efficiently because it's visual, so you can see like what the character's doing, you can see the setting that they're in, you can see like what they're wearing, what they're running from, what, you know, how the interactions are happening, all within a second. And so it's like instantly, it's like accomplished all of the world building that a book needs to take like pages in order to do. But books are like so much better at actually being able to get into a character's inner monologue and inner workings. I don't know, I just find it interesting how different things lend themselves to different strengths. But I just want to sit down, give that little update. I have 5 classes left plus I think there's 4 Q&A videos at the end as well. So I'm planning on finishing that today, which I'm going to jump right into right now. And I will probably see you in a few hours for me, but a few seconds for you for a little wrap up for this vlog with my final thoughts on Maggie Stiefvater's writing class. And we're back on a different day actually, because I decided it was better for me to wait a second and kind of let my thoughts sink in after I finished the class in order to give you my final thoughts on Maggie Stiefvater's writing class. I really liked it. Overall, that's my biggest takeaway from it, is that I really liked it. It's accessible definitely for new writers, as well as still being useful for more intermediate or experienced writers, because she does explain some of the basics, but she doesn't linger on those things too long, and it's more about examining Maggie Stiefvater's own writing process, which I think is really valuable no matter what level of writer you are, is to look at what other specifically professional authors in the genre / age category / style of writing that you want to write and see what they are doing, because part of learning how to write is learning how you write and trying new things, trying new methods, and seeing what works and what doesn't, and figuring out how to best create that story that you want to create. Maggie Stiefvater specifically writes young adult fantasy and very commercial style fiction, and so it was very helpful for me personally, who also wants to write in that space, to kind of see the way that she goes about things. I think if it was any more expensive, I would say it's not quite worth it. There's like 2 different types of writing courses, right? There's the I'm just sitting here and absorbing the information that's coming at me, and then there's also the type of writing classes where it's a lot more writing group focused, where you do a lot of critique of other people's works and other people critique your work. And so those ones where a lot of that critique is happening, especially for a professor, if the teacher or professor or whoever is the one giving critique to all the students, that obviously takes a lot more work and a lot more investment, and thus creates a more expensive type of class, but Maggie Stiefvater's class definitely falls into the just giving information style, and so I do think that it is good that she has it priced so low. I would say if you are thinking about getting it, just wait until she has a sale, because she has those pretty regularly. I originally heard of her class while she was having a sale and wanted to buy it, but knew I wasn't going to have the time for it, and you know, still also wasn't 100% sold on if I wanted it or not. And I think that must have been early 2021 when I saw that, or maybe late 2020. Regardless, she had multiple sales by the time Black Friday of 2021 rolled around, and that's whenever I did buy it for, I think, $20 actually. It was 20 or 25. So just wait until she has a sale to buy it, because again, she has them pretty regularly, and I think $20 for the 8 hours, I think it is 8 hours of video content, is pretty well worth it. She has transcripts available also to make it more accessible, and a workbook that kind of goes through everything also in text form with some other details and like specific pages that you can take notes on. And also at the end of it does have some more like supplementary material of stuff that she finds helpful. The good thing about it too is now I own the class. Like, I own access to these videos for life. So if she uploads more Q&As, I can access those. If I want to rewatch everything a year from now, I can do that. I don't see myself rewatching it fairly regularly just because that is a lot of video. There's probably going to be some specific videos that I do rewatch just to kind of internalize some of that a little bit more, and I'm also going to be referencing the workbook a lot, I think. As I was going through the class, I also had a Google Docs open in order to take notes, and I took 15 pages of notes, which probably wasn't entirely necessary. Probably the most helpful part of the whole class for me was in one of the later videos. She takes a chapter from one of her books. I can't remember which one it is specifically, but she takes a chapter and kind of breaks the whole thing down, like shows you basically everything we've talked about for this whole course in how she crafts the idea, how she brings that into the story level, then the chapter level, the scene level, the line level, all of that kind of stuff, like how all these lessons physically get put into practice. And I'm just always here for like specific examples, and I don't think I've ever found such a good and in-depth example of how to craft a chapter, basically. We see a lot about how to craft a story because we see a lot about story structure, and we see a lot about sentences because of grammar and how we can play with grammar to do different things. But I feel like we don't get that like middle section, maybe the act or the chapter length thing. We don't see a lot of stuff, or at least I don't see a lot of stuff that breaks down how to craft those things. So I found it so interesting and so helpful to see a physical example and hear her explanation of why she put this dialogue here, of why she put this bit of exposition here, how she blended it with the action, how she slowed the pacing or sped up the pacing depending on what she wanted and what she was trying to do. Like, that was such a good video. That is definitely one I'm going to be returning to over and over and over again, just to continue rewatching it and just to study how she wrote that chapter. But those are some of my final thoughts on Maggie Stiefvater's writing class. Let me know if you have taken it, what your thoughts are in the comments below. That way anyone who is watching this video trying to decide if they want to take the class or not has a little bit more information from more than just me. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye!